Oh, hi there. It's a real American Brian. I was just about to read some G.I. Joe. Why don't you come join me?
Yo, Joe. Talking comics, here's your host. It's a real American Brian.
All right, we're back, and let's get into G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, issue number 2, The Panic at the North Pole. Our Joe team has all their cold weather gear on, and they're ready to go to the North Pole. So we have Herb Trippe providing the cover again for this issue, but the interior pencils were from Don Perlin, and the story written by Larry Hama. And we get somebody reporting back to General Flagg that the research center at the U.S. Research Center at the North Pole has been ransacked, and all the researchers inside have been killed. So we got a major problem here, and there's some secret files that are missing as well. So at the Pentagon, we have the generals discussing the situation and find out that there is a Russian research station not too far away, but they have to be careful to not make any aggressive moves towards the Russians. They put together a 4-person G.I. Joe team for the mission, but unfortunately all 4 have been granted leave at the same time somehow. So they have to go and get them. So we find Stalker, who appears to be hunting, but it turns out that he's just a nature photographer, and that's what he's doing in his free time. And at MIT, we have Breaker, I guess, tapping into a computer, having some ladies admiring him. And he gets a secret, not so secret really, message on his screen. Leave canceled, report to the pit, Flag. I guess anyone else that would read that may not really understand what's going on there. But, again, you would think it would be a little more discreet. And Scarlett's at a martial arts tournament where a soldier walks right up to her and uses her real name and her code name together. Kind of why do we have code names if we're just walking up to people in public and announcing their real name and their code name? And kind of strange. But it has to happen right away somehow. She can't possibly finish her fight and then move on. So right in the middle of the fight, she's called away. Duty calls. But her opponent is not done with the fight and kind of sneaks up behind her. But before he can do anything, Scarlett takes care of it with a swift kick to the face and kind of ends things there. And then we go to an isolation tank lab and find that Snake Eyes locks himself in an isolation tank. And this is the first reference to his face being disfigured, where the soldier gets him out of the tank and, my God, that face! Which, again, is incredibly rude that's always the first reaction of somebody to his face. But they get his mask on him, and they mention that he spends 8 hours at a time in the sensory deprivation unit, which is kind of crazy, but that's Snake Eyes. And then our 4-man team is set and ready to go. They're all on the plane. So we have Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Stalker, and Breaker that we're sending to the North Pole. And they mentioned some of the equipment that they're given. Breaker has been issued a new communications rig, which is the capability of sending and receiving teleprints. It's pretty cool technology. And they, again, reiterate that, this is a delicate situation because of the Russian contact, and they don't want to start a war. So they're really going in as reconnaissance, and they don't want to get caught. So they drop in on the North Pole, not too far from the Russian Research Center, and they set up their blind with their little tent and get to work surveilling the situation. And as they do, they see an Eskimo come up, and this is our first appearance of Kwinn, the Eskimo. After 6 hours, so they're watching for 6 hours before the Eskimo comes in with his dog sled, and this is another character that Larry created that's not based on any toy. It was created for the comics. At this point, with the limited roster of Joes and Cobras, you needed more characters that to help tell the stories. And having Kwinn, a mercenary, that's kind of an in-between, gave some interesting options there for telling the story. So he goes into the station, and just a minute later, he is back out and gone. So the Joes are a little confused about why he went in and came out so quickly, and also left the door open. So the Joes presume since the door is open, no one is in the station, and since no one is in the station, they can't come into contact with anybody, so it's okay for them to take a closer look. And shock! Ah, what did the Joes see? Good Lord, ain't this a kick in the head as they burst through the door. The Russian research team is all dead and frozen. The heating units have been off, and they have been there at least a week. Breaker notices an ultra-low frequency beam and knows that it can be used to biologically affect brainwaves. But there is one piece missing. The Eskimo must have it. Snake Eyes discovers some planted explosives, and the Joes get out of there. And right behind them, as soon as they leave, the research center blows up. So, good thing Snake Eyes saw those. So, after the research center has blown up, the Joes discuss the situation and assume that the Eskimo must have been working with the Russians, and they decide to break camp and go after the Eskimo on foot. They're going to run down his dog sled team, apparently. And Breaker gets a message on his cool little fax machine backpack here, and it has all the information we need on Kwinn, the Eskimo. We find out, I guess this is the first time we find out his name, Kwinn. He is a freelance special ops enforcer who never lies. He's also a big dude, 6'10", 260 pounds. It's getting dark soon, so they presume that Kwinn will camp, and they are going to double time it through the dark at the North Pole to catch him, which sounds like a fabulous idea. Right? So, 5 hours later, they catch up to Quinn's campsite by a downed plane. They sneak up on the guy next to the fire, only discover that it is a cleverly shaped package of explosives to look like a man. Kwinn comes out of the plane, lets the Joes know that he has a detonator, and that they need to drop their weapons. So he's got them now. Kwinn exposes that the Russians were using their low-frequency beam to shoot at the American researchers and induce fear and mass panic amongst them, and had plans to shoot it into America in general and cause this mass panic and fear. But the shield on the Russian equipment leaked, and they were affected by their own equipment. They became paranoid and killed the Americans, and when their heating unit went out, they were all too far gone to fix it. Kwinn stomps on Breaker's fax machine all Office Space style here, then goes full James Bond bad guy and explains the rest of his plan. He was hired by the Russians to retrieve the missing module and take the American files and meet them on the beach tomorrow. Then we have here Kwinn speaking of the Shadow Man. The Shadow Man has the eyes of the shaman. He sees the spirits of the snow and ice gazing at his soul like a hungry bear. Some pretty cool Eskimo vibe there. And Stalker takes the lead from the team and decides that they're going to go after Kwinn. And already has a plan in place. This is what we have to do. So they began scrounging for parts. They grab a compass, some maps, and use the skis and seats to make an ice boat. This quickly assembled mess is about to outrun an Eskimo with a dog sled. Sure. Snake Eyes grab some explosives, and they are off. Their compass and maps help them to take a different route and get in front of Kwinn, despite his head start. And they find the perfect place to set up a trap for Kwinn. So they're going to set up the explosives and blow this snow bridge to cover him as he comes through. But they need something to detonate the explosives. So Snake Eyes reveals he has a couple of ammo clips in his boot. And they use the primer powder and a canteen cup to create a detonator, setting up to blow the block of ice and drop it on, make their trap complete. So, just as they finish, they get word, he's coming! And they blow up the snow bridge and have Kwinn trapped. Their first concern, of course, is getting his dogs to safety. But Kwinn is not there. He sneaks up behind them. This Eskimo is no fool. As he is about to shoot them, Scarlet flies in and kicks him from behind. But that is nothing for Kwinn. He announces that he has fought polar bears, because of course he has. He is a badass Eskimo. Snake Eyes pulls out another hidden ammo clip and dives for his gun, but it won't fire. Yeah, click, click, click. And Kwinn has removed the firing pins from the weapons and put them on his weasel skull necklace. This Kwinn is quite the force here. Then, soon the spirits of snow and ice will devour your souls. That is sad for you, our brave fighters. You know I regret having taken this assignment from the Russians because they are tampering with fear, and fear is the greatest killer of all, greater than snow or ice. This frequency modulator is a concentrated nugget of fear, waiting to pollute the world with distrust and loathing. I feel that the only way to neutralize it is to give it to you. Then why don't you? I can't. A contract is a contract, to the letter of the word. If only there were some other way. So already we're finding out that, Kwinn is loyal to his contract, but has a moral conscience that's kind of pulling him in a different direction here. So 1 hour later, Kwinn pulls up to the Russians, and he is 2 hours early, but they're waiting for him. He announces the research station is destroyed, he has the module and the files, and has neutralized the Joe team. Job well done. And the Russians give him confirmation that his contract has been fulfilled. And then we get more of Quinn's insight here. No, I want to be far away when the G.I. Joe team arrives here. I abhor senseless violence. Like, what? What's going on here? So then the Russians flip out and demand that he stays and protects them, but his contract has been fulfilled. They accuse him of aiding the Joes, but he lets them know he has done nothing but hinder them at every turn. He left them 5 miles away with no firing pins, but he stopped a mile from here and left his necklace as an offering to the spirits of ice and snow that fear might vanish from the world. Perhaps if you found my carrion before they did, you might dispel my prayer. They are 4 miles from it to your 1. But they are trackers, and you are not. And then we get this nice image of Snake Eyes wearing the weasel skull necklace, so they obviously found the firing pins, and nothing is needed to be said here. We know that the Joes are on to the Russian troopers. They're going to get the module and the files back. But it does pose kind of a question there, since they were not able to attack under any circumstances, what are they actually going to do to the Russian troopers? Not real sure. But that is issue 2 and the Panic at the North Pole. This issue, my favorite panel was the second to the last one, where we see the troops pop up. No words are necessary. We know everything. Kwinn has told us everything that we need to know. The weasel skull necklace and what it symbolizes, and that the Joes are there ready to be badasses. So I'm going to rate this one out of 5 flag points. I'm going to give this issue 4 flag points. There are some silly elements to it, but it is pretty well thought out adventure. And Kwinn is a really cool character, and seeing him outsmart the Joes and the Russians was pretty sweet. And that is issue 2. Knowing is half the battle, and now you know. Subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video where we dive into issue 3.
So long from Brian. Until next time, same Brian time, same Brian channel.